Well, it is voting day, as I like to say. Going back to the days of Tom Joyner and Joe, the singer, Joe Thomas, and we were asking him about was he registered to vote and was he engaged in the whole voting process? And Joe said, "When is voting day?" Well, today is voting day. This is it for the state of Georgia, and I just love that. I mean, it's not election day. It's voting day. And this is what we're all about. Voting day in the state of Georgia is going to change the United States Senate for the better or for the worse, depending on your standpoint, of course. But it is a voting day. And as we speak, a number of the polling places throughout the state of Georgia have already closed. This is voting day. This is election day. The runoff elections involving the Republican David Perdue against versus Democrat John Ossoff, as well as Kelly Loeffler against Reverend Raphael Warnock. Those are the two races. If you do not know, stick with us and we'll try to get you up to speed of pretty close to a year of electioneering and electioning, I should say, and maneuvering, and we can probably get it done this hour. Welcome to our catch up of what has happened today in the state of Georgia, a state that nobody ever thought we would be here. No, who would have thought that, first of all, Joe Biden would have taken the state of Georgia, and who would have thought that we would be in a position with now two runoffs and where the Democrats are leading in the state of Georgia. And yes, it's looking like the state of Georgia, if it's not already purple, it's moving towards blue, closer to blue. And we want to thank the folks from Black Voters Matter who have been a part of this. And just as our last day of this, I just want you to see my T-shirt and can you see that in the back too? And thanks to Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright and all the great people there at Black Voters Matter for their support of us. And we will continue to work with them because they do such great work and appreciate them. Latasha, as Ward White and I were saying earlier, Latasha is on fire today. She's on MSNBC and she was taking no prisoners, but laying down some knowledge and spitting it out as only Latasha Brown can. And our scheduled guest today is C.K. Hoffler, and she spits knowledge like nobody else can either. And so we are going to welcome C.K. and maybe J. Anthony Brown. I'm not sure. Hello, Madam President.
Hello. How are you, Sybil?
I'm great. No, how are you?
I'm alive and well. It is 7 o'clock, so the polls have closed. In most places, there was a question about one polling district where they wanted to keep it open a little bit later because they started to open later. But for the most part, the votes are in. And so I just want to say, first of all, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. I hope you had a wonderful holiday.
I did. It was a little bit of a holiday because, you know, we've been working here in Georgia to get to this day.
Right.
We had early voting before that started on December 14th. It seems like it's such a long time away.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days break for the holiday. And then we got right back at it. And it's just been one interesting scenario after another. Really.
C.K. Hoffler, if you folks who are just hearing and seeing her for the very first time, is the president of the National Bar Association and is engaged in a number of issues revolving around not only nationwide and politics, but certainly as a Georgian involved in these elections. And overall, C.K., how do you feel today about what has happened, and especially in terms of the vote and starting from December 14th? I mean, because the numbers were crazy as far as early voting was concerned.
Well, I feel really good about the effort. There was a lot of voter suppression in different ways that manifested itself in ways that perhaps we hadn't seen before. But I feel good about the fact that coming into today, over 1 million African Americans had voted and over 3 million people had voted. Those were record numbers. And coming in, I mean, the polls, the lines were packed. People were voting and determined not to be deterred and determined to vote. And so to see, you know, Black and brown people, young people, people of all races voting, exercising their right to vote, And even when they were told that they were not registered voters, and they know they had registered, they had proof of their registration, they requested provisional ballots, which is what we wanted them to do. And I just felt that the extraordinary effort of the Grassroots organization, I heard you mention Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter Fund, Transformative Justice Coalition, Barbara Arnwine and Daryl Jones, incredible work, Votercades and good, and the John Lewis, Good Trouble, marches and votercades everywhere. Southwest Voter and Education Project that reached out to over 130,000 Latino voters in the state of Georgia. And of course, Rainbow Push Coalition. We all stand on the shoulders of Reverend Jesse Jackson and the efforts of Rainbow Push. Rainbow Push was everywhere. And then how could I not mention the National Bar Association? The National Bar Association, we did a blend of grassroots efforts and legal challenges. And that's important to know, because we had some of our lawyers out there doing, for one, Barbara Arnwine and Daryl Jones from Transformative Justice Coalition are preeminent National Bar Association members. Barbara Arnwine has been our advisor and has been a leader in the National Bar for years, Tanya Clayhouse as well. So it was just extraordinary to see our lawyers in the trenches, and not just with election protection and fighting voter suppression. And then there was a parallel action in the courts. We all saw and have seen the extraordinary work that Fair Fight and other organizations have launched. But a new lawsuit was filed about a month ago, and I can say I was just delighted to be one of the many National Bar Association counsels on that litigation, representing Black Voter Matters Fund. That would be Latasha Brown, Transformative Justice Coalition, Barbara Arnwine and Daryl Jones, Rainbow Push Coalition, Reverend Jesse Jackson, as well as the Southwest Voting and Education Project. And that would be Lydia Camarillo. And the reason why that's critically important is because they were fighting for the over 197,000 voters who were improperly or illegally, we submit, stricken, purged from the rolls in Georgia. So the work of those organizations, not to mention the Voting Rights Alliance and so many other organizations, Georgia Coalition of the People's Agenda, Helen Butler, some of the preeminent grassroots organizations and organizers in the state of Georgia were on point, took their efforts to another level, coordinated with all of the groups that we're hearing from Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, Fair Fight, the National Bar Association, Rainbow Push, Transformative Justice. All of them were coordinating and coalescing together. I think there are probably over 200 organizations, and just touch hundreds of thousands of voters, literally knocking on doors, making calls, sending postcards, and organizing the votercades, organizing the efforts in the community, making sure people had transportation to the polls, making sure people could vote, making sure seniors were safe, making sure that problems were addressed. 1-866 our vote. That hotline was used extensively. Harold Franklin, who was chairing the Lawyers Committee effort in Georgia, did a phenomenal job. We were all in touch with each other. Our lawyers at the National Bar Association, whether they were from our Divine Nine partners or other partners and coalition groups, were out in full throttle, working the hotlines, de-escalating situations and issues at the polls. The clergy were out in full force. And everybody, because these are all 501c3 organizations, so our efforts had to be nonpartisan. Everybody just wanted people to have the right to vote. And there was so much money and effort and energy devoted to preventing people from voting. And I kept on saying, Sybil, what are people afraid of? Just let people vote. What's the big deal? Let them vote. And today I was on a radio show, and someone asked the question, why are states allowed to just do this, to suppress voters? To which I responded, since the Shelby County versus Holder decision in 2013, which systematically dismantled some of the protections that the Voting Rights Act gave us, we're seeing where states could just randomly, at whim, in a volatile manner, impose, in some instances, draconian conditions on the voters. We saw that in Georgia. We saw things like some counties not having any drop boxes. How does that work? Or having 1 day of early voting when there should have been 2 weeks of early voting. Things like that's voter suppression. We know it, we understand it, we see it. And that's why in the lawsuit, that I, along with Gerald Griggs, along with Maria Banjo, Jeannie Mirren, Jonathan Savage, Brittany Brown, Brittany Allen, and the incomparable Fred Gray, Dr. King's lawyer, Rosa Parks' lawyer, the victims of the syphilis experiment in Tuskegee's lawyer, we together, National Bar lawyers, are bringing that litigation, and it continues simply because
that was my question. That was my question, because the last time we talked to you, you were here with Gerald and talking about this, and you were going, I believe it was like a Monday or a Tuesday, and you guys were going on a Thursday to present the case.
Absolutely. So we moved in this litigation for what we call injunctive relief. We believe that we wanted the court to immediately restore those 197,000 plus people to the rolls. And the judge said, because that's an emergency effort, the judge said he didn't find that there was sufficient evidence for us to do that, but he did find that there were inaccuracies, irregularities, voter issues, and he encouraged the sides, meaning the Secretary of State, who is who we sued, and the four plaintiffs, Rainbow Push, Transformative Justice Coalition, Black Voters Matter Fund, and Southwest Voting and Education Project, to get together and figure out why these irregularities are taking place. Because the judge recognized, certainly, that no voters should be improperly purged from the rolls. And there were inconsistencies. The testimony of the experts and the evidence that we presented, the judge found that there certainly were these inconsistencies and inaccuracies that needed an explanation. So we reached out to the Secretary of State. We actually went to the Secretary of State's office and the governor's office. Oh, yes, we did. And we sat there. Oh, yes, we did, because we said, and there were some notice questions and notice issues raised by the judge. So what we did was cured it. Attempted to cure it. So we said, we're not going to have a notice problem. Well, the Secretary of State said, well, we didn't quite, what had happened was really kind of sort of no. That we know was disingenuous, but they made that argument. So we said, we're going to give you proper notice. Here are all the lists, even though we did this before, and we're going to hand deliver them so that there is no issue of what had happened was we don't know, we didn't get it, we didn't see what. So we hand delivered the list, we hand delivered out of the issues, and every single day we reached out to them to ask if they would sit down with us before the runoff election, before today, so that we could restore those people to the rolls.
Sure.
Of course, they didn't do it. We expected them not to do it. So the litigation continues. Why? Because we're going to have more elections in 2 years, have more elections in 4 years, and we've got to stop this voter suppression. It is not good enough. But for those incredible organizations and so many others in Georgia, when they discovered all these people being purged, and Fair Fight, also Fair Fight's litigation addressed this issue as well. But for all of these groups discovering this and reaching out to Georgians to say, look, you better check your voting status. You don't know if you've been improperly purged. But for Georgians being brave enough to come forward and say, we are not going to be denied the right to vote, we would not have been able to touch so many through the litigation and through the efforts of the plaintiffs and others in this case. So the litigation continues.
Our guest, as you can see, is the wonderful C.K. Hoffler, and talking about what's going on in the state of Georgia legally, as well as folks today having their last day to cast their votes in two very important runoff elections. As we mentioned before, we have the current Senator David Perdue trying to go for his second term in the United States Senate against young progressive John Ossoff. And the second race is Kelly Loeffler, who was appointed, now trying to be elected to this position of the United States Senator. And her opponent, obviously, is another strong man, and that is Reverend Raphael Warnock. And today is the last day to vote. And if you're talking to someone, if you're watching us or talking to someone on the phone or communicating with someone and they're still in line, please don't if they are in line, and even though the polls have closed, please do not let them get out of line. Stay there, and don't let anyone tell you different. If you're in line, stay there, and you will be allowed to cast your vote. And that is very important, as we've seen over the years, and people being led to believe that because they weren't there inside, or because they weren't able to cast their vote just before 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever time it is, they could not vote. And that is the last thing we want people to go away with.
And can I just add one more thing, Sybil, to that? And that's excellent advice. So still call your friends and family and tell them not to be discouraged. If they are told they are not registered voters and they know they are, they must ask for a provisional ballot. This is so important. This is why our litigation is continuing. Because today we filed papers again, because we're not stopping. We're just going to continue until it gets done. And we asked the judge, we said, okay, because of all these people that we believe have been purged illegally, if anyone is turned away and if they cast a provisional ballot, we are asking that their ballots be automatically counted. Why? Because they've been illegally purged and we got the list. So this is going to continue unless there is a clear, unequivocal, with just so many like a victor, someone who's going to win decisively, way ahead, which could happen. Way ahead. This is going to be hotly contested. So every vote is going to count. Every ballot is going to count. So we must preserve the integrity of the process. We already know what the Secretary of State's office is going to do or not do, because as I said, when he was running against Stacey Abrams to be governor, to become governor, he was the judge, jury, and executioner. And that's not right. That's not right. You can't be, if you're running, you don't need to be the person organizing the elections and making determinations about what's going to happen in certain polling places. And I saw it in places where Stacey Abrams was very strong, progressive people, problems with the machines, shutting things down, the voting places opening late, the staff not trained, insufficient. This is pre-COVID. This had nothing to do with COVID. Pre-COVID, all kinds of crazy issues without COVID. Then, once COVID happened and the presidential elections, they decided after, and thanks to the incredible efforts of Stacey Abrams and her team, that Georgia was going to get all these new machines. But you see, if they don't get you one way, they try to get you another. So then with these brand new machines during the primaries, what we discovered, because it took me 5.5 hours to vote, it should take me 5 minutes, that in certain progressive precincts, in certain progressive areas, the brand spanking new machines were not working. The incredible volunteers never been trained on them. So if you don't know the machines and you've been trained on them, and then like 4 hours later, people, the one sort of like, it seemed like there was one engineer in the entire state of Georgia comes driving in to literally flip a switch. And all of a sudden the machines work. And not enough paper ballots. This is my perception. Not enough paper ballots, 24 paper ballots for hundreds of people. So they had to, I felt like I was during Fred Flintstone days where Fred was calling Barney Rubble and Wilma and Betty. We need more ballots. Can you? And they were going, with those machines, with the car to go get some more ballots for the hundreds and thousands of people who were just sitting there and not to be deterred. And that level of energy has been escalated in this runoff election, because the more that the forces of voter suppression infiltrated our communities and this state, the more determined people were to refuse to be denied. And that was the beauty of it. And these organizations, these, unsung heroes in so many instances that were there in the community, protecting the community, whether they were lawyers or pastors or people of the cloth or grassroots people that have always been in the trenches. Our organizations, they were there protecting the people's right to vote, shielding them, telling them, come on, we're going to make sure and provide for you, because after all, that's what this is. And for it to happen in the breadbasket of the civil rights movement, in Congressman John Lewis's state, in Dr. King's state, and for this to happen where one of Dr. King's, his legacy, if you will, is Reverend Raphael Warnock. Now I have to be, nonpartisan in my discussion as president of the National Bar Association, and I've been true to that, and that's what we do.
So, we have a couple of things. I think our friend George Wallace is with us. And George, if you want to join us as a man and in Atlanta, we'd love to have you join us. And if you're still standing by, but we also have our friend Michael Stallworth, and Michael is crazy with numbers and all of the breakdown of the numbers that are coming in as the polls are closed, but they are coming in fast and furious. And so Michael Stallworth is going to give us a quick look at how things are going right now. And if you could just give us an overall view, Michael, or anything that strikes you. How are you, Michael?
Oh, I'm good, Sybil and CK. How are both of you?
Great.
Great.
Glad to have you. What are you seeing now as the numbers are coming in?
Yeah, and just to point out, this is just the first wave of exit polls. More than likely,
Sure.
you're going to see at least one more. And as of the numbers I've been reading, the difference is less than 1 point between both Warnock, Loeffler, and Ossoff at Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like both men at this point did just what they needed among the white vote. They both 29%. And among the black vote, which is 29% of the entire electorate, both men got 93%, which in actuality is higher than what Joe Biden got 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, are you seeing anything? This is one thing that struck me, CK. It's the statistic that statistically and historically, the white Republicans wait until the day of for election day to vote. Are you seeing anything regarding that in their turnout today, Michael? Or is it still too soon to look at that?
I'd say it's a little soon, although I have been hearing a little bit of commentary from MSNBC's Steve Kornacki, who of course talked
Oh, we
about
love Steve
how
Kornacki,
Republicans.
yes.
Yeah, he's a natural treasure.
Well, you're our treasure, and so what did you hear?
He mainly just talked about how the mail-in early vote is likely going to be overwhelmingly Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
and the election day vote is more than likely going to be Republican. And
Yeah.
what he also said, though, too, was some counties are going to do their early vote early, and some
Mm-hmm.
counties are just going to wait later to process their early vote. So
Right.
it's not going to be like what we saw in Pennsylvania, where there was like a big dispersion on election night, and then as the days went on by,
Right.
the gap just shrunk because of the
And
mail-in ballots being crossed.
another number, and I don't know if you can speak to this, and maybe you can, CK, I'm not sure, but over 100,000 people who did not vote during the general election, but did return to the polls for the runoffs. That seemed to me to be a striking number of people who recognize, okay, I didn't have a chance, I did not take my opportunity then for whatever reason, but now I have an opportunity to make a difference. And 100,000, that's not a small number. And so I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, I think that is very significant. And I would dare say a lot of those 100,000 voters were African American.
Mm-hmm.
So that is very significant. That's a very significant number. We know that close to 80,000 people in Clayton County who were registered voters, and that's a predominantly Black county, did not vote the first time around. But you see, this time around, what I think was different was the grassroots effort was so heavily focused on our communities, number one. And number two, every single time, and I'm trying to be nonpartisan, that our president opened his mouth to say bop bop de boop de da, and where people could hear it, they were like, oh hell, okay, forgive me for saying, hell no, I'm voting. I'm voting. I am voting. We are not going to let it go down this way. And so we don't know what the outcome will be. It's very, very close. But I can tell you, just based on all the information I'm getting are from the organizations that were doing the phone calls, because we have a circuit, we have a network, and we have meetings on a daily basis. And what people are reporting, so that the organization would know where they need to focus, what they need to do. You've got to realize that in certain rural communities in Georgia, there is no internet. Not at all. Not whatsoever. And so without the internet, people communicate via radio, and some people via their phone. So they don't have computers and stuff. There's just no internet service, and it's an amazing thing. We take certain things for granted in some communities. So people can't go online to check their voting status. They couldn't, in communities where they didn't have drop boxes, against the rules again, that's voter suppression. They couldn't, they had to go to the Secretary of State's representative office to drop off their absentee ballots or mail them back in. Well, we know how the mail was rolling.
Right.
So or they had to vote in person. And for people who did not realize there weren't going to be drop boxes and asked for absentee ballots and then realized they need to vote in person, then they had to deal with all of the shenanigans with the Secretary of State's office. So there were a lot, but all of this was escalated up and out to the brave men and women who are on the front lines addressing these issues.
Right.
And I think that was the big difference. So will ultimately that result in, we don't know what it's going to result in. I think Michael is saying it's really too close to call right now. And we knew it was going to be a close race, but I will tell you that unprecedented numbers of voters voted in a runoff. Typically, we don't see these types of numbers actually in any runoff, much less Georgia. But I think that some of the actions of suppression cause people to wake up and get up and say, oh, no. We're not going down this way. We're not going out this way. And my vote does count. But the presidential elections taught us, showed us throughout the country, and in particular in Georgia, was that every single vote counts. That's why the message that we were preaching, all these organizations, they were preaching, ask for a provisional ballot. Don't just walk away. You have an option. Get that ballot because that ballot could count. Whereas a lot of times people just walked away when they were told you know, we're not gonna, and a lot of times it was by design. If you were in Cobb County, for instance, and let's say you were of a different hue, you were black or brown or young or something, you know, there might be people that would say, you just can't vote here, and we're sorry you're not on the rolls and we don't have you registered, and that's that. But the dynamic forces of the grassroots effort taught these young people and people who were turned away to say, I want a provisional ballot.
Nice.
Or I'm going to right now call 1-866 our vote.
Right.
And then isn't it interesting how miraculously after the call and things were escalated, oh, wait a minute, we didn't look at this list. Oh, here you are. Yeah. Okay. So there was one really, really heartwarming but tragic story that we saw out by Bibb County, where there was an African-American, an elderly woman who voted via absentee ballot. And a couple days later, she got confirmation that her absentee ballot was indeed received, not accepted, but received. Then 2 days later, two gentlemen came knocking on her door, asking her to verify her identification. Now, you know, that is illegal in all kinds of ways.
Every way.
Every way that you can think of. And so she escalated that up. And fortunately, it's amazing how the intervention of lawyers and other poll workers and people who are in the voting rights space were able to miraculously turn that around, where she got the next thing when she checked online that her ballot had been accepted, that her absentee ballot had been accepted. But to have, just think of a senior citizen, you get a knock on your door and two odd-looking men are asking you for your identification, and she didn't know it, so she gave it to them knowing that something was wrong, but that could have really ended in something very different. And it could have
stopped right there, but she had the foresight and the strength to carry it forth, as you said, in order to make a different outcome.
And she didn't just escalate it up to one hotline, she escalated it up to two, because she saw all of the people in the community that were there. She was like, well, wait a minute, and this is a senior citizen. And how about another woman today who had just had a stroke? She just had a stroke, and she called her daughter. She said, I don't know. And the reason why we know these stories is because they're escalated up on the hotline. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it, baby, but come get me because I need to vote. And that was in part because of seeing all this stuff on television, all kinds of phone calls and different things that were very, very disheartening for people who have fought these fights over decades. So, you know, Sybil, there's so many stories. There's another chapter to this because these groups have coalesced in a way we've never seen in Georgia, and I would dare say actually in the country.
And so, Michael, before we move on with other examples of this, is there anything else that's caught your eye and that you want to share with us? And then we're going to ask you to come back if things happen as we go on through this hour.
Yeah, I'll just briefly mention that about 8% of the precincts supported right between Warnock and Loeffler. Warnock is leading 62-36, with 8% of the precincts reporting so far statewide.
Statewide. Okay.
And
All
looking
right.
down at the individual, and looking down at the counties, Fulton County seems to be off to a pretty fast start. 22% of the count alone is reporting. And Fulton
That's
County,
awesome.
of course, is Atlanta.
Yeah. And that Warnock, and as you said, there's probably like a 1% that is separating both sets of
It's like,
candidates, and
mhm,
with Purdue and Ossoff, there was that the last poll I saw was probably about 1%, and Warnock may have had about 2%, if not a little bit more, difference between him and Kelly Loeffler. So, but if there's anything else
mhm.
that catches your attention, give us a shout, and we'll get you back on. Okay.
I sure will.
Thanks, Michael. We appreciate you, Michael Stallworth, and we will look forward to talking to you. CK, the other person on the other side of the spectrum who requested an absentee ballot, you probably heard this, is our friend Tyler Perry. He requested his ballot on December 2nd. And as we got closer, he still had not received it. And so there was a Twitter conversation between him and Stacey Abrams. And finally, she said, for people like Tyler who had not received their ballots, please go and vote and tell them that that you had applied for a ballot and you had not received it, so that you can place your vote. And Tyler's like, look, I'm just gonna fly home. Which is something, most folks, we've had stories during the general election of a 90-year-old woman having her son drive hours, to her original polling place so that she could place her vote. Our friend Tyler probably flew his plane
Yes.
to to vote, but that's how important it is, and everyone having their vote count in this statewide election. It really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was aware of that. And, for every example that we have of a Tyler Perry, there are probably tens of thousands of
Mm-hmm.
people who experience the same. And it is heartwarming that Tyler Perry would do that, because what happens to someone like Tyler Perry, he gives hope to the least of these, the people to have the energy to say, you know what, even though Tyler has way more than I have, his vote counts as much as my vote. And if he can do it, I'm going to do it.
That's right.
And I think that was the spirit that we saw. That's why, fighting on all levels in the courts, people, I was talking to someone yesterday, the days are blending, Sybil, but I was talking to someone yesterday and they were saying, why is it so important to fight in this way? I said, because you don't know what is going to make sure that our rights are protected.
Right.
It could be on the grassroots level, and it could be in the courts. It could be in the court of public opinion. Things happen in the court of public opinion that frame issues. Social media, young folks today who are turning out in record numbers, they live by social media.
Right.
I don't know about you, Sybil, but myself and I, I'm sort of getting around, the Facebook thing. I'm kind of on, I'm doing that sort of, but Twitter and Instagram. If I were president of the National Bar Association, I would dare say I probably would not be doing that at all. But that is how young folks communicate. There are wars that are won and lost through social media, as we know internationally. And so I say all that because that's how people are communicating. When they hear these stories of Tyler Perry, when they hear these stories of other people, the least of these, this is happening to senior citizens, people being turned away, lived in the same house, voted every election, and then told they've been stricken from the rolls. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Dr. King's cousin, of all people. There's so many stories that are being chronicled, and this is very important for the narrative, because these narratives provide ammunition for litigation.
Right.
Not litigation where we're trying to make up something that didn't happen, as we saw after the presidential election, making up stuff as we go along. I mean a narrative about voter suppression, so that we have the evidence that we need to be able to pass legislation that will strengthen the Voting Rights Act, because the Shelby decision dismantled this. So we see all of this improper, unfair application of the rules, which only the Secretary of State can do. That's why the blame really falls in the hands of the Secretary of State on a lot of the voter suppression. I know people are telling him, are saying, but he's a hero now because he stood up to the president at what, you know what? This is what I say about that. Yes, not everyone's bad, not everyone's good. Right. There are some good things that happened when his family was threatened, just like, the kind of voter suppression we see in our community a lot. And we don't sanction or condone any threats to anyone's family whatsoever when someone is doing their job, whether we believe they're doing it right or not. That's wrong, in my humble impression. But we do say, when you have purged people illegally or improperly, just come to the table and let's figure it out. Right. What is everybody afraid of?
Yeah, so there's a lot to be afraid of, because we're seeing that power dissipate as we speak. And that's all they got left. Let me just say this. We had a young man who was standing by, and I think we lost him. But J. Anthony Brown, if you are still in the room there somewhere and you can hear us, please come back in. We'd love to have you. There you are. Oh my, what is that you have on your head?
It's a hat.
Oh, it looks like something else.
It's LA, Sybil, but it's very cold here. Anybody who lives here will tell you that it is cold. I don't know what it is. Maybe, I don't know. Christ is coming back real soon or something,
Well, we know that tonight there's going to be a world of change. So, J. Anthony Brown, say hello to C.K. Hoffler.
Hello. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very good. I had to do a morning show this morning, the Steve Harvey show, and that started at 6.
Are you still on that show?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Unless you heard something. Did you hear something?
No. I listen to you every morning. I do listen to you.
So nice.
So I'm all out of whack. I'm an old man. This is messing me.
and CK, just so you know, Jay is, as he said, he's in Los Angeles, so that's 3:00 in the morning.
Yes.
That he's getting up and going to work. So.
And when you reach this age, Sybil, you don't take a nap. A nap takes you. You know what I mean?
We used to have this joke, CK. Have you hit the wall yet? And
we were doing the show. Yeah, we hit the wall. Well, I hit the wall today, so I am so sorry that I'm late, because I really did hit the wall. I hit the wall. And I don't know if you can see it. This is my living room. Can you see this sculpture behind me?
Yes.
Well, whenever I do a show, people are like, who is that guy? Who is that guy that's looming over your shoulder? It's a sculpture I got in Africa, so if it looks weird, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Well, no, it's between the hat and the sculpture. It's a lot.
I know, huh?
Jay, do you have any? Have you had any feedback? Have you talked to any of your people? Because I know that Atlanta is big in your life.
I've talked to my people. All of my people have voted, except one, but he never votes, so we won't worry about him. Though. All right, it's just one. Everybody's got that one. But I'm looking at the results right now, and I don't know, Sybil. I mean, what do you think? I don't know.
Well, CK has been well, I can't speak for everybody else, but I think that CK has been giving us hope. Michael Stallworth has been on talking about some numbers, but also about the numbers of people who didn't vote in the general election, but did vote in the runoff elections. And so,
Warnock's numbers look very good.
Yeah.
Look for them, and I know this is a joke, so just take it as a joke, okay? All right? Take this as a joke, okay?
He's a disclaimer. We got the disclaimer, okay? All right.
Brace yourself, because here comes
and we have
joke.
An attorney here, Jay, so she's used to disclaimers.
Okay, so we got the disclaimer, no litigation.
Sybil Wilkes show is not from Sybil Wilkes. Warnock may win. He may win. That's the first part of the joke, okay? But he might be arrested for beating a white woman. Okay, that's the joke.
So you heard it here first.
I'm not like a granddaughter, right?
You know what? A good joke is a good joke. Okay?
It is. And if I could say something about that in terms of the one debate that we saw and his demeanor,
Oh my God.
His demeanor. I thought he was very appropriate. You know, as a trial lawyer, I mean, I've tried a lot of cases with some of my male law partners, and whenever they have to cross-examination is when you go into, you got to annihilate the person you're cross-examining.
You go in, yeah.
Right, you're going in.
Lawyer, I know what cross-examination is.
He's been divorced like 5 or 6 times.
Okay. So what had happened was, okay.
3 times. I know.
You know what cross-examination is. Okay, so then you know that when a man is cross-examining a woman, I always tell my male colleagues and law partners who are in that position, be very careful. Men don't like to see men beat up on women, and women don't like to see men beat up on women. Right. So when you are doing a jury trial and everything turns on the perception of that jury, you have to be exceedingly careful. So Raphael Warnock, at that debate, I thought his demeanor was perfect. He pitched it perfectly. Yeah. Because he could have gone in and said a whole bunch of stuff that perhaps a woman may have taken the liberty to say.
Right.
But, and to boot, a black man, a black man, people don't want to see men beating up on women. People never want to see a black man beating up on a white woman because that creates a whole different dynamic. So to that joke that you said, I think that Reverend Warnock handled it very nicely.
He really did.
And pitched it well on that issue, really, truly.
Yeah, but her biggest problem was she has the problem that a lot of white women have, that they feel that if they can just smile, it answers all of their questions. That all I have to do is just smile and act like I know what I'm going to say, and I don't say anything. And every black man and every black woman has seen that. My grandmother used to call that S-eating smile. When you get on, you've seen that S-eating smile when you get on the elevator, or when you want service from them, and that's what she has, and that's it. And you're right. He had the opportunity to just go in and lambaste her, and he didn't. But she was her worst enemy.
He made his points.
Yeah,
and he didn't go in with the knockout, but he did make his points in a very comfortable and non-threatening way.
She made his argument for him. She really did.
Right.
Well, there's that too, Jay.
By being as dumb as she is.
Well. And so, but what had happened was, therefore thus. So what I will say is that what had happened was, what we noticed was how Reverend, I'm just not going to address that. What we noticed was how Reverend Warnock was able to pivot. A lot of people initially didn't know what they thought, and this is the thing, how talented he is. They thought he was just going to be Reverend, when you're up there preaching in the pulpit. Right. But he pivoted so well on all, just like, now what you got to say. But I think that all of that being said, we know all the dynamics, and we know that in a race like this, it's going to be very close. It's hotly contested, challenge. The everyday, and I know, Sybil, you were here for a period of time, and for those of us in Georgia, in Atlanta, it was just painful to see some of those commercials. Yeah, because what I think people didn't realize, those commercials affected all of us. If you were African American and have just a little bit of church in you, you ain't got to have a whole lot. You don't have to have a tradition of Christianity, hallelujah, and all that. But if you just grew up at all with a little bit, it offended your sense of integrity, your very essence of your being. Absolutely. Being called, it wasn't just calling Raphael Warnock, Reverend Warnock, a radical. It was calling all of us radicals. If you breathed, if you were a leftist radical. And I think that type of rhetoric and dialogue and messaging and programming really, really catered to a segment. And it was effective with that segment, very much so. But to many others who may have been borderline and really weren't quite sure, didn't know anybody's Raphael Warnock, knew about Kelly. They knew the little bit, she was there 8 or 10 months. But, people, the incumbent has the upper hand. Right. even if they're even if they are an appointed incumbent, even if they're a billionaire appointed incumbent, they have the upper hand. That's just the reality of politics. So, but that type of rhetoric over and over and over again, and drawing, going back to, Jeremiah Wright, the stuff that didn't work for Obama, but using that again and catering to a community, it was very effective for a certain demographic. It was very, very ineffective for another demographic, but they weren't trying to even get that demographic.
No. It becomes a fact that if you say it, and it's worked for Trump, it has worked. It really has worked. You said, and I said this last week, it was another joke. I said, so last week when I was on Sybil's show, I said, Trump has said he's won so much that I'm like, well, maybe he did win, but he didn't win.
You thought maybe you missed something. You said maybe I missed something. I didn't see the election. Maybe he did win.
Maybe he did win. I don't know.
Even last night, where he, during the rally in Dalton in northern Georgia, and he was trying to, tell me I won, and even the people were kind of looking at each other, going, "Okay."
Yeah, that's right. But what did he win again? He won what now? Okay, but the thing,
and being, every woman or every man has been in a relationship where you've been lied to, and he's doing what you just do. Just stick to the lie.
Right.
It's just
it wasn't me.
And he's never gonna give this lie up. And you have to accept that he's gonna lie about this until the day he dies. That he won the election. He's gonna be able to pull in a group of people. He's got 80 million followers that believe he won.
Yeah.
So let me draw an analogy, which is tragic in our community. So for young Black boys and Black girls who are constantly told that they are dumb, that they will never amount to anything, that they can't achieve, that they mean nothing, and no one sees them, when it's over and over and over again, year in and year out in school, with teachers, with people who are there that they should trust, they begin to believe that they are nothing, that they will amount to nothing, that they have no voice. And that is the impact of, that's the other side of the coin. And that is what we see in our community. So there's so much that we learn and see from this election. And there's so many, there are a lot of clouds, a whole lot of clouds, but there are also some silver linings in that cloud, because it's been a wake-up call for many people.
Yes.
Many people on all sides.
But what Trump running in Warnock in this race in Georgia has brought an awareness of people in politics that just have never had an awareness in politics. You've got young people really aware in politics. You got young people voting. And I've never seen the Republicans as divided as they are now. I've just never seen. They've always been on point, but now it's Mitch McConnell's group against Trump's group, and that has really hurt what's going on in Georgia. But I'm thankful that it's happening, but it really has divided that house. And I think Trump did this on purpose, because he does not want these two people to win. He really doesn't want them to win, because it will say to him, if they were to win, he would say to himself, how can they win and I can't win? Which he said that about a lot of Republicans. He just can't believe he lost. He couldn't believe he won, and now he can't believe he lost.
Right.
And the tragedy of it really is, as we're talking politics, what hangs in the balance is every right in this country and democracy. That's what hangs in the balance. So when people say, well, I don't need to vote because, like, first of all, I'm stuck on I don't need to vote. That's number one. But when I hear that, I give them about 20 reasons why they need to vote. It doesn't matter who they are. I'm like, well, you don't care about your health care?
Right.
Hey, how about you're living in COVID? What is your family doing? What is your family going to do if one of you all contract COVID and have to go to the hospital and your hospital bill is $100,000? How about that? Because you might be in a state that has not embraced affordable care and you don't have options. What will happen if you are someone who has anyone in your family who is an illegal immigrant? We all immigrated from somewhere. I mean, I don't know if people really realize that. We all immigrated from somewhere.
Right.
What is going to happen to those family members? What's going to happen to your colleagues? By the way, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to this country if we don't turn the tide with COVID?
Right. Oh my
Has
God,
anyone
yeah.
been talking about COVID? What is this president's
The greatest
plan?
failure of this presidency is the way that this country has handled this disease,
This
this virus.
disease.
Yeah.
This virus.
Right.
Before we wrap up, we're going to bring
Wrap
Michael
up?
back.
Whoa.
Well, you know, we were here at the top of the show.
What do you mean?
What had
Wrap
happened
up.
was. That's what had happened was.
Right.
I know.
For real.
What had happened was.
You know, this dude behind me, you know, was. We're going to bring our friend Michael Stallworth back for a quick wrap up and give us the latest that he has found, and then CK, we're going to give you and Jay the final words. So, Michael, welcome back. And what are you finding now as we're getting close to the first hour since most of the polls are closed?
Yeah, currently 18% of the state has reported, and between the Warnock-Leffler race, it's 55-44 Warnock. And we're starting to see more reporting from Metro Atlanta.
But that's still early though. I mean, as great as that sounds, it's still early, right?
Yeah. Although the count is rather fast compared to election night.
Yeah.
Oh, because it's just one state.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We don't have all the other stuff.
And so based upon that, Michael and CK, do you think that we'll have anything close to a call or a result of either of the races tonight?
No.
Or is that just too much to ask for?
I think it's too much to ask for. I'm sorry. Let me defer to Michael.
Yeah, I think probably sometime tomorrow at the earliest.
Tomorrow, see, I was wondering about that too. If tomorrow wouldn't be too soon, but thank you for that, Michael. I appreciate it. Is there anything on the Ossoff Purdue race?
I will definitely check into that, but I really don't expect much variation since the numbers are pretty much the same.
Gotcha. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you and for always being with us on these shows. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it too, Sybil. You too, Jay.
What's up?
Thanks, Michael. We'll talk to you. All right.
Who would have thought?
Go ahead, Michael.
Who would have thought I'd be on with my two favorite members of the TJMS?
Yeah.
You know, if Tom was watching, I don't know how you explain that to him. But thank you.
You would say the same thing if Tom was here and I wouldn't. So don't even try it, man.
And he would especially say that if you and Tom were here.
I know. He definitely would say that.
Have your back, Sybil. I would have your back. I would have your back, Sybil.
Thank you. All right, Michael. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much. And Jay and CK, we can have the serious commentary.
Yes, the serious stuff. Well,
Yeah.
you know, coming from me, I used to live in Atlanta. I lived in Atlanta for about 25, 30 years. So I know the city, and it's where I really started my comedy career. It really is. I mean, I don't know if you're from Atlanta, if you've been there for quite some time, but Mr. V's Figure Eight is where I started my comedy career. So I owe a lot to Atlanta. I go there all the time. I just finished working there for Tyler Perry. So the people of Atlanta it's been an awakening that I haven't seen in a long time. And thanks to somebody in the White House who's made it happen, that people are aware and they know how powerful their vote is. And it has changed the dynamics of what we're doing. And not only has it woke up Black people, but it has woke up white people in terms of knowing how powerful our vote is. And they've become awoke now, like, whoa, these Negroes can change things. We can, and if we don't reach out to them, and if we don't pull them into what we're doing and make them accountable for our plan, we're going to never win an election. We're never going to win again. Black, brown, Hispanic. If the Republicans don't change their attitude, but just looking around and everybody in the group looks like them, they are going to continue to lose. That's just my opinion.
No, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good, huh, Sybil?
Yeah. Well, and I know people are just expecting another joke.
I know.
No, and that I have to
I
tell
come
you
to recognize
that was very serious. I agree 100% for this reason. Atlanta and Georgia is different today than it was a year ago.
Oh my God, yes.
It's just different. Just the vibe, just the and I think that there's been so much pain. You know, Atlanta is a city where, I mean, we talk about Georgia being, one of these southern states, but the breadbasket of the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
There's been so much pain and loss here that the coalitions that have been built and created and are working together have never, in my humble impression, worked together this well and taken it to a different level ever, at least not in my lifetime, maybe not in the past 2 or 3 decades. And that is significant. That is so significant for young people to see, for young people to experience, for young people to march, for young people to protest in a nonviolent way.
Right.
Against whether it was George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. By the way, Ahmaud Arbery's parents, his family came out in support of these motorcades for Transformative Justice Coalition. All of the people who were just on the periphery in rural areas never had anyone approach them and say, your vote count, you count, you mean something. That creates a new day and a new awareness and a new awakening. And we can't go back. It's like you can't go back into slavery.
No.
You're going to fight like everything with every orifice of your body to say, I'm never going back. And I think that is what's happened in Georgia.
Yeah.
So for all the destructive forces that played a role in making sure that people say we're not going back, I say thank you.
Yeah.
And to all of the constructive and effective forces, the grassroots organizations, the legal teams, those who dared to step out and say enough is enough, I say thank you. And Sybil, we are incredibly indebted to you for your voice, for lending your voice and your platform so that people can be heard. We really, really thank you too, and thank you for this opportunity. And as I said, to be, with J. Anthony Brown and Sybil Wilkes, it's and to talk about real serious issues. Right with Jay, but I don't know if you all recognize the power of your voice,
right,
of the radio. Whether you're joking or not.
I don't know about Sybil, but sometimes you take it for granted because it's just us talking and having a good time. And you forget how many people are listening.
Yeah.
I mean, even when we would do the radio show,
we
forgot how many people were listening. And you still meet people today. I listened to you when I was a little girl, and a lot of people were listening because they had no choice.
Yeah, because their mamas and daddies had them in the car and they couldn't go anywhere. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something that's sobering. This is my last comment, Sybil, that we know that Black women have been, on the forefront of these elections, whether it's a presidential election, organizing, voting. We're the largest demographic that supported the Biden-Harris camp. I mean, that's just the reality. Numbers don't lie. But Black women, by and large, listen to the radio.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
So.
And it's going to stay on the station they set it on. It's going to be changed.
Well, I say keep on keeping on because we need to hear that.
If you get in the car with a Black woman, you're going to either listen to gospel or you're going to listen to music. My music, okay?
And my music, that's right. And my news station and all of that. Let me just say this, a couple of things. CK, I can't thank you enough for always coming on and enlightening and educating us, and so appreciate that. My friendship with you and bringing Barbara Arnwine, the great Barbara Arnwine, into this, and Latasha and all of these great things. I thank you so much, and I hope that this is not the end of
it's not the end. Anytime you call, I'm going to jump.
I appreciate that. One more thing. People are asking for us to continue once or twice a month to keep us up to date on the fight for justice. And so we'll ask you to please make this a regular stop for you to come back and to keep us in the loop and know that what the charge is and how we go forward and how we can help you.
Absolutely. And I will bring with me some of the leaders and people who are making a difference so that people can see and hear people who are on the front lines and who are dedicated and who will not stop, because this is a movement.
Yeah.
This is a movement.
Before we go to our Black Voters Matter close, yesterday was Dominique's birthday. Our
Oh yeah,
friend
I saw that. Yeah,
Dominique's
happy
birthday.
birthday, Dominique.
And Dami Dom.
Happy
And
birthday.
this is, we started something new last Friday on the 1st of January, CK, because all of our news has been very heavy, and we needed something to bring people up. And so our executive producer has a book called Yogi's Jewels. And so as a motive of inspiration and motivation, every day we have a Yogi's Jewel. And this daily inspiration for today was be gentle with yourself. Please take time to be gentle with yourself, and look ahead to tomorrow. Breathe. Just
Please,
breathe.
please, please, sweet Jesus, help us. We need help.
And that's today's inspiration for the day as well. Thank you all very much. We will keep you up to date on what's going on with the election. Jay, as always, love having you whenever
Love you,
you want to
babe.
come in. The door is always welcome.
You know, it's funny how God works. I've never been this close to a lawyer where I wasn't being cross-examined. So much.
But let me tell you, J. Anthony Brown, you need a lawyer because you never know when somebody messes with you.
You're right.
Honestly.
You're right.
They might look at your hat and they might say a thing or two.
Lori Bieniemy is my lawyer, but I mean, just look at this. Look what God did. Look at this right here.
All right. Good night, everybody. Have a good one. We'll keep you up to date on what's going on.
Watch Assisted Living on Wednesday night, y'all.
Yes,
Okay.
tomorrow night. And that's on BET.
Yes.
And one more time, thank you so much to BlackVotersMatterFund.org. We so appreciate you. Good night, everyone.
Love y'all.
Who needs a little love today? Who needs some love sent their way?